Chapter 877. When Granny Flower Ghost said that she saw Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei, no one doubted that. At a time like this, no matter how unreliable Granny Flower Ghost was, she would not spout nonsense. Everyone looked at each other and cautiously approached the deepest part of the fog. However, when they saw that Shang Tianliang and Shang Qi actually followed them in, they could not help but frown. They did not know what the Blue Dragon Society's great dragon head was up to. Why did he bring these two natives in? Could it be that he wanted to use these two to explore the way? Before they could think too much, they were immediately enveloped by an extremely powerful force as soon as they stepped into the fog. The next moment, they saw the figures around them. It was not just the two that Granny Flower Ghost said, but countless of them. One of those silhouettes was black while the other was white. They were extremely blurry and their silhouettes couldn't be seen clearly. However, they were constantly exchanging blows in this distorted space. As light and shadows appeared, no one could clearly see their exchange. However, everyone could feel the powerful pressure coming from them. It's the afterimage left behind by the two powerhouses in the past. This space had been completely distorted by the fight between Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji. Even some of the rules between heaven and earth had changed a little. Therefore, some of the images of their fight were imprinted here, even though they had been distorted beyond recognition. However, everyone's eyes still lit up. No matter how distorted it was, this was something left behind by the two powerhouses in the past. Even if it was just a trace of their aura, they could extract enough martial Dao comprehension from it. However, at this moment, everyone heard a faint voice coming from the shadows. Duga brat, don't run if you have the guts. Could it be that you're afraid of me? Wayaya. Duga brat, you're shameless. You're using this trick again. F***ck. Why did you shatter the space again? This place is too weak. These words floated in this space, faintly reaching Lu Chonglu, making him feel extremely awkward. According to the records in the sect's ancient books, their patriarch was indeed such a person. He had a very nasty personality. Dugu Weiwei was a typical ruthless person in battle. Almost none of his words had been passed down. Instead, the entire space was filled with Ning Xuanji's various clamors. Everyone else's eyes were filled with disbelief. This is Ning Xuanji? How could the legendary immortals look like this? How could it be like this? Lu Chonglu coughed and said, "Everyone, please do not spread the news of what happened here to the outside world. This humble Taoist will thank you here." Ying Zhao had a strange expression on his face as he said, "I'm afraid that even if we tell others, no one will believe us. They might even think that we are slandering your true martial arts cult." Chu Xiu didn't move. He just stood there and sensed the aura and imprints left behind by Dugu Weiwei. The moment he stepped into this place, Chu Xiu was completely immersed in it. The qi and blood in his body seemed to be boiling, and there were some traces of connection with the aura here. It was a very inexplicable sense of familiarity. He couldn't explain it clearly. Anyway, this place was extremely beneficial to Chu Xiu. It could improve his martial arts comprehension, especially in the aspect of demonic arts. As for whether this power was left behind by Dugu Weiwei, Chu Xiu couldn't care less. What he needed now was power. The others noticed Chu Xiu's reaction. They suddenly reacted at this moment, and immediately began to sense the aura of power left behind in these traces. Just now, through the voice left behind by Ning Xuanji, they also knew that although Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had fought here before, this place wasn't the end of the battle. They only stayed here for a while. After that, they shattered the void and went to other places. However, although they didn't see the life and death of the two powerhouses, and there was no inheritance, these images were treasures for them. Many people wanted to watch the battle between Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei, but they couldn't. It wasn't that the two experts had stopped them, but that the power of their fight was too strong. Even the experts at the mysterious understanding realm couldn't withstand the aftermath of the battle. They could only hide far away and listen to the powerful shockwaves from the battle between the two. But now, although the traces of the images left here were blurred and distorted, they could still perceive a lot of things if they carefully sensed it. At least for the real pellet state and real fire spirit refinement realm martial artists present, it was enough. Everyone was immersed in this atmosphere, but Granny Hua Gui came to Chu Xiu's side. She was a little surprised. Big dragon head. You also went to sense the imprint left by Patriarch Dugu? Not counting Chu Xiu. Among all the people present, only Granny Hua Gui was from the demonic path. Even the White Tiger Hall's Hellion Changfeng didn't have much of an effect on comprehending the images left behind by Dugu Weiwa. Although his cultivation technique was fierce, it wasn't of the demonic path. There were even some traces of Taoist cultivation techniques. However, Granny Hua Gui inadvertently discovered that Lin Shui was actually comprehending the images left by Patriarch Dugu. The Blue Dragon Society and the White Tiger Hall were both from the Four Symbols Divine Sect. Although the cultivation techniques were different, they were of the same origin. The cultivation techniques of the Blue Dragon Society should not be related to the demonic path. Chu Xiu glanced at Granny Hua Gui and said lightly, I also cultivate demonic cultivation at the same time, and I also admire Patriarch Dugu. Can't I? Granny Hua Gui still had some doubts, but she didn't want to waste time thinking about these useless things. She immediately seized the time and began to comprehend the images. At this moment, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred. One of the images beside LV Zhanlu suddenly cracked, and the space instantly began to distort. LV Zhanlu, who had been immersed in comprehending the technique, jumped in fright. At the critical moment, a furious dragon roar rang out around him. Golden astral energy wrapped around his body, and like a swimming dragon, he quickly dodged to the side. Everyone was taken aback for a moment before they came to their senses. The images around them also became unstable and began to distort. Lu Chonglu said in a low voice, Be careful. These images have existed here for hundreds of years. Our arrival has disturbed the power here, and the images that are close to us can no longer be preserved. Hearing this, everyone immediately became anxious. Chu Xiu was the only one who was able to absorb the true meaning of martial arts left on the image traces very smoothly, because of his inextricable connection with Dugu Weiwa. However, it was very difficult for the others to comprehend it. Only Lu Chonglu was able to comprehend it a little faster. After all, he was a member of the true martial arts sect. His martial arts were of the same origin as Ning Xuanji. The others quickly dispersed, and each went to look for the image imprints that had not begun to distort to continue comprehending. However, a cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. In just a short period of time, Chu Xiu had already almost comprehended the martial arts imprints in Dugu Weiwei's image imprints. The remaining time was for him to kill. Chu Xiu gave Shang Tianliang a look, and then walked toward Zhang Yunzi. At this time, Zhang Yunzi was also grasping the time to comprehend. He sensed that Chu Xiu was coming over, but he did not care. The cultivation techniques of the Blue Dragon Society also contained some things from the Dao sect. Now it was normal for Chu Xiu to comprehend the martial arts left by Ning Xuanji. However, at this moment, the Heavenly Law War Case suddenly appeared in Chu Xiu's hand, and it turned into the sky-seeking tyrannical spear. With a powerful momentum, it suddenly stabbed toward Zhang Yunzi. Seeing this scene, everyone present was dumbfounded. No one could understand why Lin Shui had suddenly attacked Zhang Yunzi. Was it because Zhang Yunzi had stopped him from killing the Wang family members in the outside world? If it was just because of such a small matter, then wasn't Lin Shui's temper a little too bad? At this time, Zhang Yunzi was immersed in the comprehension, and his vigilance was focused on the image imprints to prevent them from suddenly collapsing. He did not expect that someone would suddenly attack him at this time. Lin Shui didn't comprehend the image imprints himself, but he stopped others. This was simply harming others without benefiting himself. Zhang Yunzi roared, Lin Shui, what the hell are you doing? Chu Xiu did not answer. The sky-seeking tyrannical spear had already stabbed down. Zhang Yunzi hurriedly formed a seal with his hand, but he was still blasted away by the spear. Before, everyone had only tried to comprehend the image imprints a little. After a long time, they had already begun to distort and collapse. Now Chu Xiu had directly attacked. As his spear fell, an image imprint beside Zhang Yunzi immediately began to crumble and distort. It stuck close to Zhang Yunzi and directly strangled the pure yang astral energy protecting his body, almost engulfing him completely. It was extremely dangerous. In the past, the battle between Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei could tear the void, But for a cultivator in the true fire spirit refinement stage, the power of heaven and earth was still something they could not resist. However, this dangerous crisis had just passed. Before Zhang Yunzi could take a breath, a figure suddenly burst out from beside him. Shang Tianliang straightened his palm like a blade. Although it was only a palm of flesh, the palm was shining with a sharp light as it directly chopped toward Zhang Yunzi. This scene was also unexpected to everyone. Everyone thought that Lin Shui had brought this native father and daughter here to use their lives to explore the way. Who would have thought that this native old man turned out to be an expert? Moreover, the moment he made his move, everyone felt that although he could only exert the power of his flesh, his aura was that of a true heaven and earth mysterious realm expert. Unexpectedly, a heaven and earth mysterious realm expert had been born in this land of death. Moreover, he had actually joined forces with Lin Shui to kill Zhang Yunzi. This situation made everyone more and more confused. Chapter 878. No one present could react to Shang Tianliang's sudden attack. Even Zhang Yunzi, who had just escaped death, could not react in time. The sharp hand blade tore everything in front of him. Zhang Yunzi could not care less about the consumption of his genuine qi. Pure Yanggang qi erupted from his body, and Dao patterns instantly appeared in front of him. However, Shang Tianliang's blade tore all the Dao patterns apart. With a loud bang, Zhang Yunzi was sent flying. In an instant, blood spilled everywhere. After severely injuring Zhang Yunzi, Chu Xiu immediately followed up. The heavenly blade transformed from the heavenly blade of the heavenly path slashed at him. Saber qi was unrestrained. At this moment, he no longer cared about the consumption of gang qi. Dugu Weiwei's aura could replace the qi of heaven and earth to replenish his consumption. Zhang Yunzi, who had been seriously injured in succession, was suppressed by Chu Xiu's unique blade technique to the point that he could not even lift his head. Next to him, Shang Tianliang was also ready to continue attacking. Shang Tianliang had stayed in Lidu for a lifetime, and had long adapted to this kind of fighting environment. When it came to a real life and death battle, his strength was even stronger than that of the people present. Previously, Chu Xiu was able to tie with Shang Tianliang, and even use powerful martial arts to suppress Shang Tianliang. That was because he still had his genuine qi to use. However, if he were to stay in this place for too long, he would use up all of his inner strength and true qi. Furthermore, with the environment of this place, he would not be able to replenish himself. At that time, Chu Xiu would be far inferior to Shang Tianliang. Ying Zhao and the others were still somewhat confused about the situation, so they did not make a move for the time being. However, Lu Chonglu, who was also from the Dao sect, could not watch Zhang Yunzi die here. He hurriedly rushed over and shouted, "Great Dragon Head! Why do you have to fight to the death in this place? Lord Shang, stop him!" Shang Tianliang immediately changed his target and attacked Lu Chonglu. On the other side, Zhang Yunzi was already injured. After being continuously suppressed, Zhang Yunzi was also angry. Up until now, he still had a baffled feeling. He and Lin Shui had only had a minor conflict in the outside world, but why did Lin Shui seem to have a deep hatred for him, and wanted to kill him no matter what? Zhang Yunzi could no longer be bothered to think about such matters. He had fought his way up from the bottom of the pugilistic world. He had been roaming the pugilistic world ever since he was a young Taoist priest. Over the years, the number of villains and evildoers that had died at his hands was countless. Even though he had been sitting in Heavenly Dipper Hall for decades, the pure yang sword in his hand was still used to kill. In that instant, Zhang Yunzi no longer cared about the depletion of his inner energy. The long sword in his hand shone with a blinding light of pure yang, as though the sun had descended. The long sword in Zhang Yunzi's hand split into thousands of parts. 1 begets 2, 2 begets 3, 3 begets all things. Countless pure yang swords flashed in midair as dense pure yang sword beams slashed towards Chu Xiu with extreme pure yang energy. The martial arts of the Chunyang Dao sect could be considered to be the simplest. No matter what martial arts or what changes, in fact, to put it bluntly, there were only 4 words: pure yang gang qi. The martial artists of the Chunyang Dao sect had a powerful pure yang gang qi that could transform into thousands of parts. They were omnipotent. At present, although Chu Xiu had experienced the true fire refinement, His physical strength alone could rival the existence of the true fire god refinement state, and even crush the weaker true fire god refinement state. But in fact, Chu Xiu's own realm was still the real pellet state, so in terms of the strength of his own internal force, he was much worse than Zhang Yunzi. The powerful pure yang gang qi fell from the sky, and Chu Xiu's body was also burning with the internal force true fire. This power was enough to threaten him. Even Shang Tianliang couldn't help but look back. Originally, he always thought that after the development of the outside world's martial arts for 10,000 years, it had surpassed the ancient times. At least, the strength of this kid was stronger than the same rank martial artists in the ancient times. However, after meeting the other outsiders, he realized that most of them were normal. Only this kid was a little special. What Zhang Yunzi displayed now was the normal power of the true fire god refinement state. If Shang Tianliang didn't use his true qi, he could only resist the strength of this blow with his physical body. Chu Xiu squinted at Zhang Yunzi. In fact, if there was a chance, he didn't want to expose his identity. But although Zhang Yunzi, the old Taoist, was old, he was not weak. The other party was already a famous figure in the martial world before he went into seclusion a few decades ago. His position as the head of the 6 Taoist guardians was respected even by the head of the Chunyang Dao sect. Over the years he had been reciting Taoist scriptures in the Tiangang Hall, and his pure Yanggang qi had been refined to the extreme. Although his qi and blood power had stopped growing, his pure Yanggang qi had become more and more refined. Just now, Chu Xiu was able to suppress him with a surprise attack, but in fact when the old Taoist began to fight with all his might, he was even more difficult to deal with than Butian-nan. Butian-nan's fusion with the Azure Dragon blood had an obvious weakness, but Zhang Yunzi's pure Yanggang qi had no weakness. Without exposing his identity, the physical strength and the black tortoise true technique that he obtained from the true fire god refinement state couldn't suppress the other party. Now he had to use all his strength. Chu Xiu put away the heavenly war case, and a majestic demonic energy suddenly burst out from his body. The others were stunned. The big dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society actually knew demonic arts. What kind of trick was this? Although the Blue Dragon Society was even more ruthless than some demonic sects, they were sure that Helian Chongfeng, who had been dealing with the Blue Dragon Society for a lifetime, had no demonic arts in the Blue Dragon Society's inherited cultivation methods. Old Lady Flower Ghost was also surprised. Just now Lin Shui had said that he admired Patriarch Dugu, and now it seemed that it was true. Did he really practice demonic arts? At this moment, in the field, the demonic energy around Chu Xiu was condensed to the extreme. In the endless pure sunlight, the ink-like black demonic energy was very dazzling. The extremely pure demonic energy condensed into a giant demonic bow in Chu Xiu's hands. At the same time, 2 giant hands made of demonic energy appeared behind Chu Xiu. One hand held the bow, while the other 3 held the bowstring. The power of nirvanic extermination from the giant demonic energy bow made everyone shudder with fear. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned, as if they couldn't react in time. Ing Bailu murmured, "It's the Triple City Annihilation Arrow. It's Chu Xiu's Triple City Annihilation Arrow." Originally, this martial technique only existed in legends. In the past, Dugu Weiwa had used this arrow to destroy the Iron Emperor Castle. This was something that many great sects knew, but it had already been suppressed at the very bottom of many scriptures. It was not until Chu Xiu let it reappear in Jianghu and killed Fang Jingwu, who was in the true fire refinement realm, with one arrow, that the martial arts technique was known to the people of Jianghu. Now this martial arts technique was basically one of Chu Xiu's signature martial arts techniques. There was a loud explosion, and the black demonic energy arrow shot out. Countless Dao swords formed by pure Yanggang qi were all melted by this arrow of nirvanic energy. In an instant, it had arrived in front of Zhang Yunzi. At this moment, countless pure Yang Dao swords were already slashing down on top of Chu Xiu's head. Attack against attack. The only pure Yang sword in Zhang Yunzi's hand stabbed out, and golden Gang qi exploded. However, it was instantly dyed black. The power of nirvanic energy was destroying everything. Even the purest pure Yang Gang qi in the world could not escape the corrosion of the power of nirvanic energy. In almost an instant, The divine weapon in Zhang Yunzi's hand was completely dyed black, and its sword spirit was destroyed. Pft! Zhang Yunzi spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he had forced the blood out of his mouth forcefully. The burning hot blood splashed onto the pure yang sword, and like boiling oil, the pure yang astral chi surged, finally suppressing the power of nirvanic extermination. But at the next moment, the pure yang sword shattered, leaving only the hilt in Zhang Yunzi's hand. He could not help but take a step back, his face pale. And at this moment, after Chu Xiu, who was surrounded by countless pure yang swords, shot out that arrow, the black demonic energy around him flourished, and at the same time, boundless true fire of internal strength bloomed around him. The black demonic energy and the gold and silver true fire of internal strength formed a very strange color, dazzling and strange. The black tortoise's divine palm was sent out, forcibly resisting the pure yang sword chi's slash. However, there were just too many pure yang swords. No matter how exquisite the black tortoise's divine palm was, it could not completely block them. The remaining pure yang swords were directly resisted by Chu Xiu's body, and the demonic energy and true fire of internal strength were suppressed to the extreme. The black iron mask on his face also began to crack. Chu Xiu's figure retreated step by step under the bombardment of the pure yang swords. By the time he had withstood all the pure yang swords, the mask on his face also shattered with a loud bang. Chu Xiu! Everyone present cried out in surprise, their eyes filled with disbelief. Although they had already guessed it the moment Chu Xiu used the triple city-destroying arrow, when Chu Xiu really appeared before them, they still could not hide their shock. Chu Xiu was not dead, he was actually still alive. At this moment, all the questions and mysteries seemed to have been solved. Why did Lin Shui kill Zhang Yunzi? Because he was Chu Xiu. Back in the 6 illusory realms, Zhang Yunzi was one of the people who hit Chu Xiu when he was down. It could even be said that although Zhang Yunzi and the others did not directly kill Chu Xiu, they were no different from the murderer. Although the one who killed Chu Xiu was Jingchan Jizong, there were many true fire refinement realm experts from the hidden devil clan in the 6 illusory realms. Even if one of them could free up to help, Chu Xiu would not have died. Thinking of this, they also knew why Butiannan died. However, they still found it strange that Chu Xiu still became the great dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society after killing Butiannan. Thinking deeper, it now seemed that Chu Xiu was most likely responsible for the mysterious deaths of the Sun Clan and the Lu Clan of Gaoping. He was back. To be more precise, Chu Xiu had always been hiding in the dark, like a poisonous snake. Who knew when he would show his sharp fangs, and by the time you reacted, the poison would have already penetrated deep into your bones. Chapter 879. Chu Xiu's appearance shocked everyone. Although there were countless records of people coming back from the dead, they still found it hard to accept the fact that Chu Xiu, who had been smashed into pieces, had appeared in front of them. However, even though they found it hard to accept, apart from Lu Chonglu, who had to rescue Zhang Yunzi as a member of the Dao sect, the others thought about it but didn't make a move. The Ying clan of Shangshui never cared about these things. As long as Chu Xiu didn't touch their interests, the Ying clan wouldn't make an enemy out of Chu Xiu. It was the same for Lu Zhanlu. He represented the Eastern Qi royal family, which was a different concept from the people of the pugilistic world. There was no such thing as good or evil. As for Helian Chongfeng, he had some ideas. After all, Chu Xiu was still the head of the Blue Dragon Society. However, although he seemed to be impulsive and reckless, he had always been cautious in his actions. People like Chu Xiu were the most difficult to deal with. Either one didn't want to make an enemy out of him, or if they did, it was best to kill him in one blow and not give him a chance. However, the problem now was that Chu Xiu was a little too strange. He was clearly dead, but now he was still alive. This was even more frightening. Although Granny Flower Ghost belonged to the Bright Devil clan, the relationship between the Bright Devil clan and the Hidden Devil clan had somewhat eased up, especially between the moon-worshipping sect and the Hidden Devil clan. Although she seemed a little crazy, she couldn't be bothered to offend Chu Xiu at this time. Therefore, everyone continued to stand by and watch, seizing the time to comprehend the traces left behind by Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei. If they didn't seize the time to comprehend, This place would probably be completely destroyed by the battle between Chu Xiu and Zhang Yunzi. At this moment, everyone else was horrified, but Zhang Yunzi was even more horrified. However, Zhang Yunzi then burst into laughter. I was wondering who it was. So it's you. Chu Xiu, the monks of Sabodhi Monastery failed to kill you and let you escape from death. If you continue to live in the dark, maybe no one will find you. But you continue to jump out and stir up trouble. Do you really think that no one in the Jianghu can do anything to you? If Jingchan Jizang can kill you once, I can kill you too. Since you can resurrect once, I'll kill you again. Let's see if you can resurrect again this time. After sitting in the Tiangang Hall for so many years, I thought that I could only become a memorial tablet of the Chunyang Dao sect in the end. But before I die, I'll drag you, an unorthodox demon, down with me. I'll get rid of the evil in the pugilistic world and make a name for my Dao sect. My life is worth it. As Zhang Yunzi's voice fell, the blood in his body began to boil and a blinding pure yang astral energy emanated from his body. I will use my blood to ignite pure yang. Zhang Yunzi's blood and qi were like fuel that ignited the scorching pure yang astral energy. Under that extreme power, the evil demons retreated and the demonic aura melted. Zhang Yunzi was already giving it his all. It should be said that he had no intention of living from the moment he learned of Chu Xiu's identity. Both sides had already formed an irreconcilable grudge. Zhang Yunzi had been roaming the Jianghu for so many years, so he knew what could be resolved and what could not. Furthermore, the Chunyang Dao sect would never compromise when it came to doing things. The divine weapon in Zhang Yunzi's hand had already been completely destroyed. But with a casual wave of his hand, he drew out a scorching hot pure yang sword from the powerful pure yang astral qi. As the sword slashed down, everywhere the astral sword passed by, everything would be destroyed. The pure yang energy was like the descent of the sun, bringing with it extreme heat waves that pressed down on Chu Xiu's head. Even the devil qi around him was completely suppressed. Using such a powerful martial technique in such a place would expend one's inner strength and quintessential energy. There was almost no replenishment. However, Chu Xiu was different. Because he had some strange connection with Dugu Weiwei, he was different from the others from the beginning. From the moment he stepped into this space, the power left behind by Dugu Weiwei surged into Chu Xiu's body, replacing the heaven and earth essence qi to replenish the power he had consumed. It could be said that the reason why Zhang Yunzi could still display such great power was because he was burning his blood and qi to replace his quintessential energy. And the reason why Chu Xiu could continuously use a martial technique like the Triple City Annihilation Arrow was because he was using a cheat. The pure yang sword slashed over as the heavenly law war case in Chu Xiu's hand transformed into the peerless heavenly blade. The sea-cleaving saber of the seven extremities slashed out with an extremely violent aura, causing the surrounding space to distort. It caused the images left behind by Dugu Weiwa and Ning Xuanji to disappear one after another. The sword and blade collided, erupting waves of extreme fluctuations. In an instant, the heavenly war case turned into the great e-battle halberd. The violent demonic aura slashed down, colliding with the pure yang astral energy. The power was simply terrifying. The power of the two sides was no different from the outside world. There was no restraint at all, but as they fought, not only Zhang Yunzi felt that something was wrong, but even Ning Zhao and the others felt that something was wrong. Zhang Yunzi could continuously provide pure yang astral energy that was more powerful than the outside world, because he burned his own blood and qi. But what about Chu Xiu? He was actually still at the real pellet state. Even if he had a deep foundation, his stored internal strength and true qi couldn't withstand this kind of consumption, right? In this place, Ning Zhao and the others didn't dare to consume too much aura qi. Chu Xiu could actually use such a majestic true qi to fight the enemy, and it hadn't been drained yet. What was going on? Burning his blood and qi to ignite the extreme pure yang astral energy. From this moment on, Zhang Yunzi didn't intend to leave here alive, but he also wanted to drag Chu Xiu down with him. But the problem was, although Chu Xiu was bitterly holding on under the extreme pure yang energy, he did not seem to have used up any of his energy. On the contrary, Zhang Yunzi himself felt that the blood and qi in his body was about to dry up. After all, he wasn't young anymore, and the power of his blood and qi was limited. He wasn't afraid of death, but he was afraid that even if he tried his best, he wouldn't be able to keep Chu Xiu here. At this moment, Zhang Yunzi stretched out a hand and drew a Dao pattern in the air. They were just two very simple Dao patterns, but Zhang Yunzi seemed to have used up all of his strength to carve them. With every stroke, Zhang Yunzi's vital energy, blood, and mind would be consumed, and his appearance would age slightly. When all the Dao patterns were drawn, Zhang Yunzi was already shaky as if he couldn't even stand steadily. Pure Yang. Demon suppression. The seemingly inconspicuous Dao pattern soared into the air, and the hot light seemed to make everyone think that they saw the sun. The faces of the few people watching the battle changed. Ying Zhao whispered, "This is the pure Yang Dao pattern left by Ancestor Lu in the past. Every disciple of Chunyang Dao sect knows it. Even the first Dao pattern he learned was this." Lu Zhanlu said in a low voice, "Don't tell me that the power of Ancestor Lu's Dao pattern is actually so strong. If every disciple of Chunyang Dao sect knows it, Chunyang Dao sect would be the leader of the Dao sects, and even the entire righteous path martial world would respect Chunyang Dao sect." Ying Zhao looked at the Dao pattern that almost penetrated the heaven and earth, and said indifferently, "Not every disciple of Chunyang Dao sect knows it, but the pure Yang Dao pattern that Zhang Yunzi drew is almost exactly the same as the one left by Ancestor Lu in the past. This Dao pattern was left in Heavenly Dipper Hall, and Zhang Yunzi has been sitting in Heavenly Dipper Hall for dozens of years, and I'm afraid that this Dao pattern has been imprinted in his bones. But because of this, when he used this Dao pattern, he almost used all his strength." Lu Zhanlu rubbed his chin and said, "The thing that Ancestor Lu left behind is really not ordinary. If this Chu Xiu were to risk his life again, do you think he could be reborn? Speaking of which, my great Qi sovereign family used to be a descendant of Ancestor Lu. If I have the time, I should go to Chunyang Dao sect." Ying Zhao glanced at Lu Zhanlu and didn't say anything. This bunch of people from the sovereign family loved to find a very powerful ancestor for themselves. If they had the surname Ning, they might even dare to say that they were Ning Xuanji's distant relatives. Moreover, seeing that Zhang Yunzi was risking his life here, he didn't even have the intention to help. If Lu Zhanlu went to Chunyang Dao sect, he would probably be beaten out. The huge Dao pattern fell from the sky, and it was already a power that could change the rules. Chu Xiu could feel that his own demonic qi was suppressed to the extreme. If it wasn't for the pure power that came from a drop of Dugu Weiwei's blood in his body, he might not even be able to use his demonic qi right now. Suppressing the demons was just a slogan of the orthodox sects, but under this Dao pattern, it seemed to have the power to enforce the words. However, today's Chu Xiu wasn't the Chu Xiu who was caught off guard in the 6 illusory realms. Since Zhang Yunzi wanted to risk his life, he wanted to see whether the Dao was stronger, or the devil was stronger. Facing the Dao seal, Chu Xiu slowly formed a hand seal with his hands. Endless demonic qi rose from under Chu Xiu's feet, and even his eyes were dyed pitch black. A strange sound that sounded like the wailing of gods and ghosts reverberated in this space. It was so piercing that it made people panic, and gave them a strange feeling of desolation. Even Granny Flower Ghost, who was in the demonic Dao, couldn't stand this aura. It seemed to be formed from all the evil forces in this world. Chu Xiu's mouth followed the wailing of gods and ghosts and spat out a strange incantation rhythmically. As the incantation ended, the pure Yang Dao pattern was about to fall. But at this moment, a mournful wail sounded, and in an instant, the sky cried blood rain. The great compassion mantra of heaven and earth. The pure Yang Dao pattern, which was like the descent of the sun, was slowly extinguished by the sky cried blood rain. The Dao pattern that contained the power of the rules was less than a foot away from Chu Xiu. His own demonic qi was suppressed by the power of the pure Yang. But in the end, the Dao pattern couldn't fall, and was completely extinguished by the sky cried blood rain. With a pale face, Chu Xiu walked in front of Zhang Yunzi and said slowly, "You want to get rid of demons and defend the Dao? But as the Dao rises 1 foot, the devil rises 10. Zhang Yunzi raised his head and wanted to say something, but in the next moment, the heavenly Dao war case had already transformed into the Heavenseek tyrannical spear, and directly pierced through Zhang Yunzi's body, which was completely exhausted. Chapter 880. Following Zhang Yunzi's death, Everyone seemed to be in a daze. Apart from Lu Changlu, no one present had seen Chu Xiu fight before. Although the battle in the illusionary realm 6 was described to be extremely terrifying, that was only the description of others. Apart from those involved, the others still felt that it was somewhat exaggerated. However, now that they saw Chu Xiu, Ing Zhao, and the others felt that the battle was not exaggerated at all. In fact, it was a little low-key. Lu Changlu had already stopped attacking. Since he had stopped, Shang Tianliang naturally would not continue attacking either. Zhang Yunzi was not Lu Changliu's good friend. In fact, with Zhang Yunzi's fiery personality, he would not become friends with Lu Changlu. However, as someone from the same Dao lineage, he still felt a little upset to see Zhang Yunzi die here. Moreover, there was also Chu Xiu. Lu Changlu was the only one present who had witnessed the battle. The others must have used various methods to be reborn, and their strength must have been greatly reduced. They could only cultivate slowly to regain their strength. In the end, Chu Xiu never played according to the rules. After his rebirth, his strength was even stronger than when he was in the illusionary realm 6. In fact, it was a lot stronger. In the end, Lu Changlu also felt a little upset when he heard Chu Xiu say that the Tao was 1 foot higher than the evil was 10 feet higher. Fortunately, Lu Changlu was not the kind of person who would go to extremes. He was gentle and would try to smooth things over, even when it came to matters between the orthodox Tao and the evil Tao. At this moment, the surrounding space also began to distort violently. The remnants of the images that were left before even began to collapse on a large scale. Everyone's expressions changed. When Chu Xiu and Zhang Yunzi fought just now, the power was too strong. They had probably completely disrupted the already fragile space. Now everything was gone. Helian Zhangfeng's comprehension ability wasn't too outstanding to begin with. Moreover, it wasn't quite compatible with Dugu Weiwa's and Ning Xuanji's martial Dao. In this short period of time, he didn't even manage to comprehend anything decent. However, the others had more or less gained something. Seeing that the place had completely collapsed and there was nothing valuable left, they took the keys and infused their inner force into them. Then they tore through the void and left. The spatial collapse was too severe, and the speed was also extremely fast. Chu Xiu couldn't care less about anything else and hurriedly left. Only Lu Changlu was slightly concerned about Zhang Yunzi's corpse. He sighed and used his horsetail whisk to sweep up Zhang Yunzi's corpse. At the same time, he also left the outside world. Although Shang Tianliang and Shang Qi couldn't break through the void and get out, with Shang Tianliang, a master, his speed alone was amazing enough. He escaped before the space completely collapsed. Standing outside the collapsed space, Shang Tianliang sighed softly and said, "That kid is not simple. He can kill a real fire spirit refinement state martial artist at the real pellet state. Even in the records of the ancient classics, there are not many who can do so." Looking at the attitude of the others toward him, he should also be a big shot in the outside world. However, I didn't expect that they actually have a secret treasure to break through the space. If the people outside can completely open this space, we can be free. Shang Tianliang had always thought that Chu Xiu and the others entered this space by mistake, but when he heard that Chu Xiu was looking for the ruins of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, he had some doubts. It was not until Chu Xiu and the others left that Shang Tianliang could be sure that the other party did not enter by mistake, but came to Green Capital with a clear purpose. However, Shang Tianliang could also guess that the other party couldn't come to Green Capital by force. Although the people in Green Capital had fallen to such a degree, some ancient books and records were still intact in some gathering places. For example, Shang Tianliang's branch had some understanding of formations and other things. If the other party really had a large array, then it should be teleported together. Green Capital was only so big. Although the heaven and earth mystic illumination state powerhouses like them were useless here, they could still perceive some changes between heaven and earth. So he guessed that Chu Xiu and the others should have a separate secret treasure that could only allow one person to enter. Even if he risked his life to kill Chu Xiu or one of them to get this secret treasure, it would be useless. Shang Tianliang wanted not only to go out by himself, but to bring his granddaughter and the entire mall out together. Shang-Chi stood there in a daze. She didn't think as much as her grandfather, But at this time, she suddenly thought of something and shouted, "Grandfather, that guy still hasn't given us the other half of the pills he promised us." Thinking of the mountain of pills, Shang-Chi felt pain. Chu Xiu didn't keep his word. Touching Shang-Chi's head, Shang Tianliang shook his head and said, "Don't be angry over this kind of thing. You can even look past life and death, can't you? You lied to him once, and he also lied to us once. In any case, we didn't lose anything. The remaining pills are enough for us to survive this black storm. And if we use them sparingly, we can even survive the next black storm." Shang-Chi nodded, and a smile bloomed on her face. This was the first time she had smiled in a long time. In Green Capital, smiles were very rare. When you opened your eyes every day and couldn't guarantee that you would live through the day, a smile became a very luxurious thing. At this time in the outside world, they once again appeared in the barren mountain. Perhaps this place was the only and weakest point in the entire Green Capital, so they all came out from here. LV Zhanlu and Helian Changfeng just looked at Chu Xiu strangely, and the two of them directly turned around and left. The Eastern Qi royal family had no enmity with Chu Xiu, and Helian Changfeng couldn't figure out whether Chu Xiu was a member of the Hidden Devil clan or a member of the Blue Dragon Society, so they decided not to provoke Chu Xiu for the time being. They just brought the news back and quietly observed the situation. Granny Flower Ghost smiled and leaned over, saying, "So the big dragon head is the famous Chu Xiu in Jianghu. TSK, official Chu is the #1 in the younger generation of the evil Dao. I have admired him for a long time. I wonder if official Chu has time to discuss martial arts with me? Of course, on the bed." Chu Xiu glanced at Granny Flower Ghost and spat out a word, "Scram." Chu Xiu actually didn't have a good impression of Granny Flower Ghost. This was because he didn't like to deal with people who were mentally unstable. This Flower Ghost Granny clearly belonged to the category of people who were mentally unstable. Back then, she had dared to touch the disciples of those large sections. Previously, she had even used the Naiden faction's forbidden technique in front of Chang Yunzi and Lu Changlu. Now she had even provoked Chu Xiu. A person with a normal mind would not do such a thing. If it was not for the fact that she was quite strong, she would have been paraded on the streets. Moreover, the Rakshasa sect belonged to the Bright Demons. They were different from the Bright Demons like the moon-worshipping sect, which didn't have much enmity with the Kunlun Devil cult. Although the Rakshasa sect wasn't considered a vassal of the Kunlun Devil cult in the past, they had once hit the Kunlun Devil cult when they were down. They had massacred a stronghold of the Kunlun Devil cult in the Western Desert, and seized a portion of the Kunlun Devil cult's techniques. This enmity was still remembered by the hidden demons. The enmity between both sides was not small. Seeing Chu Xiu's attitude, Granny Flower Ghost couldn't help but reveal a trace of anger in her eyes. However, she didn't flare up. She only snorted coldly and walked away while twisting her waist. Granny Flower Ghost was just mentally unstable. She wasn't really an idiot. The scene of Chu Xiu killing Zhang Yunzi was indeed a little shocking. She was also a little frightened. Thinking of this, she became a little timid. At this moment, Ing Bailu walked over and greeted Chu Xiu. He said, "Brother Chu, when I heard that you perished together with the monks of Sabodhi Monastery, I felt a little sorry." The most outstanding person in the younger generation of the Jianghu died just like that. Moreover, he died in such a strange way. It's really a pity. However, I didn't expect Brother Chu to not only not die, but to be able to reach this stage. I don't know if it's a blessing or a misfortune to be in the same generation as you. If someone else had said this, they might have been a little hypocritical. However, Ing Bailu didn't have that. Even though he knew that there were many people in the younger generation who were stronger than him, he never felt that he was inferior to others. He wasn't as strong as Chu Xiu, but he was more popular than Chu Xiu. He wasn't as strong as Zhang Qingjin, but he was more popular with women than Zhang Qingjin. He wasn't as strong as Zhong Xian, but he was proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. He was much better than Zhong Xian, who only knew how to recite Buddhist scriptures. Even if he lost to others in one aspect, he could always win back in another. This was the unparalleled young master Ing Bailu. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "The question of whether it's a blessing or a misfortune is different for everyone. However, for you it's definitely a blessing. Because you definitely don't want to be in the same generation as a bunch of mediocre people. Bailu thought for a while and said with a smile, "That's right." At this time, Zhao also walked over, but he didn't say much. He just said to Chu Xiao, "Be careful. This time, your identity has been exposed, and you've killed Zhang Yunzi. The Chunyang Dao sect won't let this go. Those who have been trying to kill you won't let this go either. The Yinma clan may not be able to protect you." Chu Xiao nodded and said, "Thank you for the advice, clan leader. However, I've never wanted anyone to protect me." Hearing Chu Xiao's words, Zhao didn't continue to say anything. For so many years, the Shangshui clan had always maintained a neutral position. If it weren't for the fact that Bailu had a good relationship with Chu Xiao, he wouldn't have said so much. After everyone left, Lu Chonglu came out of Ludu with Zhang Yunzi's corpse. Looking at Chu Xiao, Lu Chonglu didn't have any hatred or malice. He just sighed and said, "Revenge breeds revenge. When will it end? Why do you have to solve the problem by killing? Killing Zhang Yunzi will only cause more trouble. The Jianghu won't be peaceful again." Chu Xiao said indifferently, "Sect leader Lu, you're a true Taoist expert. Taoism is pure and does nothing. It's a pity that some people like to roll around in the mortal world. Since they've been tainted by karma, there will always be a day when they get their retribution. To put it in a more vulgar way, it's like you'll have to pay for what you've done. From the first day you stepped into the Jianghu, since you've killed someone, you have to be prepared to be killed. I believe in the saying, revenge breeds revenge. When you kill all of them, won't the grudge be settled?" Chapter 881. Lu Chonglu was actually a kind and honest person. Chu Xiao said that his personality was that of a Taoist, pure, and inactive. However, only Lu Chonglu himself knew that he was afraid of trouble, and could not be bothered to care about other people's business. He really hoped that the underworld could be peaceful, and that everyone would be fine. Those who should practice martial arts would practice martial arts, and those who should cultivate Tao would cultivate Tao. Wasn't that good? Why did they always have to kill people? Therefore, he did not understand the extremes of the Chunyang Dao sect, and he did not understand people like Chu Xiao, who obviously had a problem with their values. Lu Chonglu just sighed, turned around, and left with Zhang Yunzi's corpse. Just as Chu Xiao was about to leave, he suddenly found something underground. He walked over to take a look, and it turned out to be the 2 keys that had previously entered Green Capital. However, there were cracks on them, and it was obvious that they had been destroyed. Seeing this scene, Chu Xiao was stunned. This place belonged to LV Zhanlu and Helian Changfeng. Did they throw these 2 keys? When he picked it up, there were no signs of vital qi tearing on the key. Instead, it seemed to have cracked on its own. Chu Xiao immediately took out the key from his space secret box. His key was intact, and there was no sign of it being damaged. At first, Chu Xiao thought that this key could allow him to enter Green Capital without any restrictions, but now he realized that it seemed like he was wrong. It was unlikely that the things refined by the Zhou and Wang family, who were at the level of the Formation Dao family, would have such powerful functions. Every time it passed through the space, the key would definitely be impacted. Back then, the Zhou and Wang family probably did not think of repeatedly entering, so they must have refined it based on the idea of a one-time use item. However, if that was the case, why was his key fine? Chu Xiao had a vague guess. He buried the key in his hand at the side, and he walked towards the weak point of the space. The next moment, his figure fell into the space again. When he opened his eyes again, he was in the world full of yellow sand. When the thought of leaving appeared in Chu Xiao's mind, his body returned to the weak point of the space. Letting out a long sigh, Chu Xiao had already found out what was wrong. It was the heavenly key from the 6 illusory realms. Previously, because Chu Xiao had the key from the Zhou family, he didn't pay much attention to it. He always thought that it was the key's effect that allowed him to enter the green forest. However, it was only now that he was sure that the key to break the formation was not used at all. It was completely the effect of the sky-piercing key that allowed him to pass through the weak point of the space. Chu Xiao wasn't sure what this thing was, but he was certain it had something to do with space and was a supreme treasure. Otherwise, High Heaven sect would not have placed it together with a bunch of divine arts, secret techniques, and divine armaments. After Chu Xiu's soul entered the blood soul orb in the 6 illusory realms, the Heaven's link key entered as well. It even fused with Chu Xiu's body as he reconstructed it. In the beginning, Chu Xiu was indeed a little worried. He wondered if there would be any problems with such an inexplicable thing appearing in his body. However, Chu Xiu later discovered that this thing didn't seem to have any side effects, so Chu Xiu didn't care about it. He didn't expect it to have such a use. Chu Xiu thought about it, then got up and returned to the Blue Dragon Society. Just as Chu Xiu returned to the Blue Dragon Society, the entire world was blown up by a piece of news. All kinds of news and rumors could be summed up in 4 words. Chu Xiu wasn't dead. After these 4 words, the other rumors were even more shocking. Not only did Chu Xiu not die, but his strength had also improved greatly. No one knew how he managed to cultivate the true fire body, and his strength was enough to crush ordinary true fire spirit refinement realm experts. What was known now was that Butian Nan of the Blue Dragon Society died in the hands of Chu Xiu, and Chang Yunzi of the Chunyang Dao sect died in the hands of Chu Xiu. Although the Sun clan of Jiangdong and the Lu clan of Gaoping didn't have evidence to directly prove that Chu Xiu did it, the ruthless and secretive methods were very similar to Chu Xiu's. Moreover, Chu Xiu had enough reasons to kill them. These people were the ones who hit Chu Xiu when he was down, but in less than a year, they all died in the hands of Chu Xiu. His strength and means were simply shocking. Of course, more people also knew that the world would not be peaceful again. Since Chu Xiu wasn't dead, what about his enemies in the past? Would the Sabodhi Zen monastery give up now that they failed to kill Chu Xiu? Chu Xiu had also killed Chang Yunzi, the head of the 6 spiritual masters of the Chunyang Dao sect. Chang Yunzi's position in the Chunyang Dao sect could be said to be second only to the sect master. How could the Chunyang Dao sect let it go? Moreover, there were divine generals of Elysium among them. Just thinking about it made people feel that it was troublesome. Therefore, when the news spread to the world, some people were happy, while others were worried. Of course, those who were happy were those around Chu Xiu. In a secret place of the Yinma clan in eastern Qi, Wei Shuya sat on a reclining chair with his eyes half closed, like an old man sunbathing. However, in fact, the whole secret room only had dim candlelight, which made it extremely gloomy. Chu Wuji sat next to Wei Shuya and said with a rare gloomy expression, "Today, someone tested me again. They want you to take out the inheritance of the Kunlun devil cult and cultivate another person who can support the Yinma clan. Who is it this time?" Wei Shuya said slowly. Chu Wuji snorted and said, "It's the ghost underworld sex curmudgeon Situ. That guy doesn't show up usually, but he's very quick at reaping benefits. There are less than 10 people left in the ghost underworld sect, including himself. They were going to disband completely, but who knows where he found a talented young man, and gave him all his money. Now he's trying to take advantage of you, Elder Wei." Speaking of this, even Chu Wuji, who rarely got angry, couldn't bear it. In the past, when they cultivated Chu Xiu, in addition to Wei Shuya's people, only the phaseless demon sect contributed part of the effort. The other people of the Yinma clan just watched from the sidelines. But Chu Xiu was killed, which was a slap in their faces. They were only willing to take action after Wei Shuya had calculated everything and paid a price to invite Yi Xiaonan. Now that Wei Shuya's bloodline didn't have any inheritance, they still wanted to target Wei Shuya, which was a bit too much. Moreover, those people's reasons were very good. The Yinma clan didn't have so many resources to support so many successors. They didn't say anything when Chu Xiu was there. But now that Chu Xiu was gone, it was time to replace him. Wei Shuya seemed to be a little disheartened. He said slowly, "Forget it. Let them say what they want. Their mouths are on their bodies. They are all members of the Yinma clan. How can they fall out with old monster Situ? When cultivating Chu Xiu, I didn't ask them for any resources. Now if they rely on themselves to cultivate an excellent successor, after I die, those things will also belong to them. But this old man is still alive. If they want to spout nonsense again, then let them personally ask for it from me." Just when Chu Wuji wanted to say something, someone suddenly knocked on the door of the outer gate. a demonic warrior under Chu Wuji, was holding a piece of news excitedly. He was so excited that he couldn't speak. Chu Wuji reprimanded. "Can't you be more arrogant? What made you so excited? Did the abbot of the Subhuti Zen monastery go mad during cultivation? Or did the abbot of the great Guangming temple fall into the latrine?" While scolding his subordinates, Chu Wuji took the news and read it. The next moment, his hands couldn't help but tremble slightly. Wei Shuya sat up straight in surprise and asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" There was a lot of information recorded on the paper, but at this time, Chu Wuji couldn't care so much. He just said 2 words excitedly. "Chu Xiu is not dead." Wei Shuya was taken aback. Then he threw his head back and laughed out loud. His cloudy eyes shone with a sharp light. In the main hall of the Guanzhong torture room, Lu Fengxian sat at the head, while Xiao Yi and the other torture officers sat next to him. The head seat was the seat of the hall master. It used to be Guan Xiu, then Chu Xiu, who had helped Chu Yuanqing to this position, but now it was empty. At this time, Lu Fengxian was temporarily helping Chu Xiu to stabilize the Guanzhong torture room. In fact, he was doing what a hall master should do, but he had never taken this seat, not even once. Xiao Yi sighed and said, "Young Master Lu, the people around the torture hall have started to move again recently. It has always been said that one can be a thief for 1,000 days, but no one can guard against a thief for 1,000 days. It seems that we have to think of another way." During this period of time, Lu Fengxian had been helping to oversee the Guanzhong torture room, and had gained the approval of Xiao Yi and the other upper echelons of the Guanzhong torture room. They had a better impression of Lu Fengxian than Chu Xiu. Lu Fengxian had a strong charisma, and if one had to sum it up, it would be nothing more than sincerity. He was very sincere to his friends, Lu Fengxian. It was the same when he came to the Guanzhong torture room to help. It was purely to help, and there were no benefits involved. It was this way that made people more convinced. Lu Fengxian frowned and said, "I was originally worried that the 3 countries would have designs on the Guanzhong torture room. I didn't expect it to be easy for the King of Hell, but difficult to deal with." Xiao Yi smiled bitterly and said, "After so many years, the 3 countries have actually recognized the situation. As long as they don't want another war, it's actually useful to keep the Guanzhong torture room. It can be used as a buffer. However, the Guanzhong torture room is in the middle of the 3 countries, and the profits from the smuggling trade are something that many people are jealous of." Previously, Hall Master Guan, as the successor of Lord Chu Kuanga, single-handedly established the order of the Guanzhong torture room. He can intimidate those small fries. As for Lord Chu Xiu, there's no need to talk about him. Who doesn't know his infamy? To put it bluntly, young Master Lu, please don't mind him. Although your reputation is not small, it can't be compared to Hall Master Guan and Official Chu. So even if you're here now, those people still dare to have designs on the Guanzhong torture room. Lu Fengxian frowned. However, at this moment, someone from the Guanzhong torture room rushed in without any regard for etiquette and shouted, "There's news from the underworld. Lord Chu Xiu is still alive, and he even killed Chunyang Dao Sec's Chang Yunzi." Upon hearing this, the entire hall went silent. Everyone was in an uproar, but Lu Fengxian only let out a breath of relief and revealed a trace of a smile on her face. Xiao Yi calmed himself down and looked at the calm Lu Fengxian at the side. He said in astonishment, "Young Master Lu, aren't you surprised at all?" Lu Fengxian smiled and said, "Actually, I always had this intuition that Brother Chu is actually not dead. Now it seems that my intuition is quite accurate." Chapter 882. No one knew when it started, but Chu Xiu was surrounded by many interest groups. These people might not have a close relationship with each other, but Chu Xiu was undoubtedly the center of this interest group. This was the case for Wei Shuya's branch, the Loki Inma branch, and Jinwu Hall, which Chu Xiu had spent the most effort on, were the same. In fact, among the forces under Chu Xiu, the most dangerous one was Jinwu Hall. Jinwu Hall was an existence that cooperated with the Northern Yan Imperial Court. As long as Chu Xiu was around, Jinwu Hall would listen to him, and everyone would only respect Chu Xiu. As for the Northern Yan Imperial Court, what was that? But now that Chu Xiu was gone, the Northern Yan imperial court naturally wanted to swallow Zhenwu Hall. Fortunately, Wei Shuya appeared at the critical moment and warned the Northern Yan imperial court, and the matter was dropped. At that time, Wei Shuya had just led the Yinma branch to wreak havoc in the south. Although Sabodhi Monastery did not suffer any serious damage, it was still somewhat embarrassing. The Northern Yan imperial court did not want to provoke the Yinma branch when Wei Shuya was furious, so the matter was dropped for the time being. But as time passed, Wei Shuya's threat was not very effective. The Northern Yan imperial court was trying to swallow up and suppress Zhenwu Hall. At this moment, Pang, who was sitting opposite Mei Qinglian, with a face full of anger, he said, "That bastard Ren Qianli, his master has already been killed by Sir Chu. Yet he still dares to be so arrogant here. He is simply courting death." Mei Qinglian rubbed her head and said, "In the past he naturally did not dare, but now that Chu Xiu is gone, and he is not an idiot, he dares to do this because he has the support of the entire Northern Yan imperial court." Mei Qinglian used to be a holy maiden. Even during the time in the Guanzhong torture room, she only influenced Guan Siyu and helped to deal with some small matters in the Guanzhong torture room. However, when it came to the big picture, Mei Qinglian was at a loss. Not choosing to rebuild the Yin demon sect was the right choice. With her ability, even if she really rebuilt the Yin demon sect, she would not understand it. At this moment, Tanya walked into the room with a smile on his face. "Gentlemen, I have some good news and some bad news for you. Which one do you want to hear first?" Pang, who waved his hand in boredom. "You're still in the mood to play this game at a time like this? Let's talk about the bad ones first. Since the situation is already this bad, how bad can it get?" Tanya and Yan Bugui both stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, which surprised the people of the Zhenwu Hall. Although they knew that Chu Xiu valued the two of them, they didn't expect him to be so talented. Even Mei Qinglian had to admit that Chu Xiu was very good at reading people. The two of them had been following Chu Xiu since they were still assassins of the Blue Dragon Society. They didn't show their strength before, but they really made people look at them in a different light at the critical moment. Tanya smiled and said, "The bad news is that His Majesty has been oppressing the Zhenwu Hall more and more recently. Taoist Wuyang sent me a message that His Majesty asked him to help erode the power of the Zhenwu Hall. However, the old Taoist still has some skills. I don't know if he was scared by His Majesty before, or he saw Xianglong's true nature. He agreed on the surface, but he was secretly perfunctory. He even told me the news." Pang, who was not surprised in the slightest. Back when he was still one of the 36 great bandits of the northern lands, he had already had dealings with the Northern Yan court. Although Xianglong was a great ruler, he also had the common problem of being an emperor, which was that he was overly suspicious. Xianglong couldn't tolerate any existence that he couldn't control. The current Zhenwu Hall was one. "What's the good news?" Tanya smiled and said, "The good news is that His Majesty didn't die. Instead, he became the great dragon of the Blue Dragon Society. He just beheaded Zhang Yunzi and became famous again." With a rumble, the chair that Pang Hu sat on was directly smashed by the vital energy that he couldn't control. Even Mei Qinglian widened her beautiful eyes. Tanya smiled bitterly and said, "Calm down, both of you. This news has already spread to the entire Jianghu. Even His Majesty has sent us a message. He wants us to go to the Blue Dragon Society. I'm afraid the trouble has only just begun." Upon hearing this, Mei Qinglian and Pang Hu immediately prepared to go to the Blue Dragon Society. Only when Chu Xiu left did they know what Chu Xiu meant to this group. He was more like the backbone. Without Chu Xiu, all they could do was maintain everything that Chu Xiu left behind. Only when Chu Xiu was there could he express his views on the overall situation and formulate a series of follow-up plans. A few days later, Wei Shuya, Chu Wuji, and the others from the Yinma clan, Lu Fengxian and a few torture officers from the Guanzhong torture room, Mei Qinglian, Tanya, and the others from the Zhenwu Hall all gathered in the Blue Dragon Society. Duanmu Qianshan was half a master and his seniority was high enough. Naturally, he was responsible for entertaining these people. After everyone had arrived, Duanmu Qianshan was amazed. Unknowingly, the power and influence that Chu Xiu held in his hands were already so amazing. Even if it wasn't considered the power of the Blue Dragon Society, it was enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with those first-rate sections. Apart from those top sects that had heaven and earth mysterious realm masters, who else could gather such a level of power? Especially the people under Chu Xiu's command. There were simply too many talented experts to count. Lu Fengxian, Luo Feiheng, and the others were strong experts of the younger generation who were on the Longhu list. Tangya, Yin Bugui, and the others were not bad either. Even becoming a martial Dao Grandmaster was not the end of their future. When Duanmu Qianshan handed the Blue Dragon Society to Chu Xiu, he was betting on Chu Xiu's future. At that time, although Duanmu Qianshan had placed all his bets on Chu Xiu, he was still a little apprehensive. But now these people gave Duanmu Qianshan enough confidence. Moreover, Duanmu Qianshan was not afraid that Chu Xiu would annex the Blue Dragon Society. Just look at the forces under Chu Xiu now. Whether it was the Guanzhong torture room or the Zhenwu Hall, they all retained their own characteristics and power. The only thing they had in common was that they obeyed Chu Xiu's orders. Chu Xiu only wanted obedience. As for the name of the force, he didn't care. At this time, in the lobby of the Blue Dragon Society, everyone was surprised to see Chu Xiu again. They began to ask all sorts of questions. It was a mess. Chu Xiu had no choice but to let everyone calm down first. Then he briefly told everyone what had happened during this period of time. After hearing it, everyone present was extremely surprised. Even if some of the people present didn't believe that Chu Xiu was dead, such as Lu Fengxian, they didn't expect that even though Chu Xiu had temporarily disappeared from the eyes of the pugilistic world, he had caused such a huge incident. Some people were born unstable, and Chu Xiu was such a person. After exchanging some pleasantries, Chu Xiu said, "Everyone, I didn't gather everyone here just to catch up. I have something to tell you. I'm in big trouble." Mei Qinglian said in surprise, "Didn't you just appear? What did you do again?" Chu Xiu pointed at himself and said, "My appearance itself represents big trouble. Previously, the Bodhi Zen monastery wanted to kill me. In the end, Jingchan Jizong died, but I'm still alive. How can the Bodhi Zen monastery let it go? There's also the heavenly sect. That lunatic Kuang Shiyue is the same. No one knows if the people from the heavenly sect will appear in the pugilistic world again. If they are, the heavenly sect will probably cause trouble for me. Besides, I killed Chang Yunzi previously. He was the leader of the 6 temple protectors. He died in my hands. If the Chunyang Dao sect can swallow such an insult, the Chunyang Dao sect would not be the Chunyang Dao sect. There are too many people in the pugilistic world who have grudges with me. I'm not afraid if they come at me alone. I'm afraid that they will join forces and attack me." Mei Qinglian said in a deep voice, "What do you plan to do now?" Some of the people in the hall were Chu Xiu's subordinates, some were his elders, and some were his good friends. In any case, regardless of their identities, they had a close relationship with Chu Xiu. It was about right to say that they were bound together for good or ill. Therefore, Chu Xiu's trouble was their trouble. If they survived this time, Chu Xiu's benefits would also be theirs. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "There's no other way other than to face it head on. If someone wants to kill you, you can't just stick your head out and wait for them to kill you. We can also use this opportunity to show the pugilistic world our strength. We've used too many schemes. At the critical moment, it still depends on strength." Most people in the pugilistic world had the impression that Chu Xiu was ruthless and scheming. He had all sorts of evil means. However, in fact, if he had enough strength, Chu Xiu wouldn't want to use such means to kill. A simple slap to death was the most effortless. It was also the most direct way to display one's strength. For so many years, the moon-worshipping cult had been there. Why didn't anyone come to eliminate the evil and defend the righteousness? Why did they let the moon-worshipping cult develop to such an extent? Because it was impossible to destroy the moon-worshipping cult with the strength of one sect. The loss of joining hands was too great. No one wanted to do so. It was the same in the last war between the righteous and the evil. Not everyone was willing to risk their lives for things that had nothing to do with their own interests. This matter was a problem for Chu Xiu, but at the same time, it was also an opportunity. An opportunity to let the entire pugilistic world see his strength clearly. At that time, if anyone wanted to touch Chu Xiu again, they would have to consider whether it was worth it to do so under the premise that there was no absolute benefit or enmity. Chu Xiu first asked Wei Shuya, "Elder Wei, if I really want to fight with the Sabodi monastery and other righteous sects, how many people from the Yinma clan will take action?" Hearing Chu Xiu's question, Wei Shuya was silent for a moment. Then he sighed and said, "When you were alive, I thought I could unite the whole Yinma clan with my prestige. However, after your accident, I found out that the Yinma clan had been completely destroyed. I'm just a paper hanger, but I can't paste this leaky house." Chapter 883. After the incident with Chu Xiu, Wei Shuya's heart was really cold. Originally, he thought that even if the Hidden Devil clan was a group of loose sand, it could still be considered an alliance, right? In the end, he found out later that the entire Hidden Devil clan couldn't even be considered an alliance. Even if it was an alliance, if the publicly recognized face of the alliance was killed, then they would have to take revenge with great fanfare and regain their face. In the end, Wei Shuya came forward and took out his own treasure in exchange for Yi Xiaonan's help. Only then did the Hidden Devil clan regain some face. Moreover, that group of people thought that Wei Shuya's clan didn't have a successor, yet they still dared to come after him. This was not just disappointing, it was simply blinded by greed. Chu Xiu was not surprised by this because he had already seen through the nature of the Hidden Devil clan. However, because of Wei Shuya's painstaking efforts, he couldn't say much. Now that Wei Shuya himself had recognized it, Chu Xiu had no more scruples. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Elder Wei, everyone has their own ambitions. The Kunlun Devil cult has been gone for 500 years. For them, whether it's the Kunlun Devil cult or the Hidden Devil clan, it's more of a symbol. If they don't want to help, it's useless for you to force them. How many people in the Hidden Devil clan are willing to help us?" Wei Shuya shook his head and said, "Not many. The Phaseless Demon sect is one of them, and there are also 2 of my old friends. The rest are like the Scarlet Drill Demon sect. Most of the time they are neutral. Qin Chaoxian is someone, but his vision is limited to the Scarlet Drill Demon sect. The rest like Umoya and Wuma Xian, who you met last time, can only say that they treat the Hidden Devil clan as a temporary stronghold. Although they won't cheat you, their minds aren't on you. As for the others, they don't need to think about helping you. It's already good enough that they don't hit you when you're down." As soon as he said this, everyone present was silent. Some of the people present, like Duanmu Qianshan or Lu Fengxian, actually did not know much about the Hidden Devil clan. They only knew that Chu Xiu was the successor of the Hidden Devil bloodline, so his identity should be extraordinary. But who would have thought that the Hidden Devil bloodline was already in such a rotten state? It was really not easy for Chu Xiu to be the successor. Wei Shuya sighed and said, "Since we all have to exchange benefits, I might as well give it to the moon-worshipping cult. At least they will put in more effort. But now things are a bit troublesome. Yi Xiaonan is currently in seclusion, and it is said that it is a very important seclusion. In these few months, all the affairs of moon-worshipping cult will be handled by Eastern Emperor Tai and the High Priest of moon-worshipping cult. If we go to moon-worshipping cult now, I'm afraid we won't be able to see Yi Xiaonan." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Moon-worshipping cult is always an outsider. We are a bright devil and a hidden devil. Although we can join forces, it is not wise to pin all our hopes on each other." Wei Shuya frowned and said, "But divine monk Rama is always a hidden danger. There is no heaven and earth mysterious realm expert in the Hidden Devil bloodline. Once divine monk Rama takes action, who can stop him?" For so many years, although the Hidden Devil bloodline was a mass of loose sand, the power gathered by this mass of loose sand was still amazing. There was no lack of true fire spirit refinement realm and real pellet realm. There were dozens of branches. Even if it was an unlucky sect like the Shadow Demon sect, which only had Mei Qinglian left, it also had a foundation of martial arts. But why did the Hidden Devil bloodline never stand out as high profile as moon-worshipping cult for so many years? Not being united was one reason, But the most important reason was actually that the hidden devil bloodline did not have a heaven and earth mysterious realm expert in the past hundreds of years. Although the existence of the heaven and earth mysterious realm rarely stepped out of the pugilistic world, and most of them only existed in legends, the Supreme was the Supreme. He could suppress the world with his own strength, and no one dared to provoke him. There was no such person in the hidden devil bloodline. Once they united together, they would be a live target, and it was easy to be destroyed. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "I will think of a way to deal with this matter. I can't find someone who can match Divine Monk Rama, but it is still possible to find someone who can temporarily block Divine Monk Rama." Wei Shuya looked at Chu Xiu in surprise, but he did not ask much. Next, Chu Xiu directly discussed the strategy with everyone present in detail, formulating how to deploy the forces on his side, and how to deal with the people of Sabodhi Zen Monastery when they really attacked. Previously, Chu Xiu was in the dark. The enemy was in the light while he was in the dark. He was the active party. Now that Chu Xiu appeared in front of everyone, he became an extremely obvious target. They could only deal with the situation according to the situation. Sometimes being weak in strength was so helpless. Before the war started, they had already lost the initiative. The first thing that Chu Xiu paid attention to was the Zhenwu Hall. After all, it was the strongest force under his command, and it was also the one that he paid the most attention to. Fortunately, the Zhenwu Hall originally had Mei Qinglian and Pang Hu, plus Wei Shuya, so during the period when Chu Xiu was not around, although the Zhenwu Hall had some troubles, they were not serious. On the contrary, their strength had increased. Mei Qinglian explained all these to Chu Xiu in detail. At this time, she suddenly revealed a playful smile and said, "That little girl from the Blue Dragon Society likes you." Chu Xiu was stunned. He shook his head and said, "Why are you talking about this? What nonsense are you talking about? You've only met her for the first time." Mei Qinglian stretched out her finger and shook it gently. A woman's intuition. "Didn't you notice that the little girl has been staring at me? I can feel her hostility from far away. It's as if I stole her man." Mei Qinglian shook her head. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "It's normal for her to be hostile to you. Most women will be hostile to you." Mei Qinglian, who had practiced the chick technique, was very attractive to men. If the attraction of the flower ghost granny was superficial carnal desire, then Mei Qinglian's charm was immersed in her bones. This feeling was attractive to men, but for women, of course, it didn't feel good. After all, the same sex repels each other. Mei Qinglian snorted and said, "That little girl, Luo Feiheng, has a good relationship with her." Chu Xiu looked a little strange. Luo Feiheng? She can't even be considered a woman. Chu Xiu knew that this woman, Luo Feiheng, dared to go to the brothel to ask for girls. She also secretly flirted with Mu Zi under his nose. Therefore, Chu Xiu suspected that she had a psychological shadow because of the Luo family's forced marriage, so she had completely changed her sexual orientation. Forget it. Let's not talk about these useless things. After returning to the Zhenwu Hall, immediately withdraw all the forces and be ready to take action. Don't care about Xianglong. Anyway, they have already fallen out. As long as we don't rebel for the time being, His Majesty can't say anything. Mei Qinglian nodded and retreated. At this time, seeing Mei Qinglian leave, Mu Zi, who had been secretly observing Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian, was relieved. She didn't know why, but when she saw the incomparably beautiful Mei Qinglian, she subconsciously felt a sense of hostility. She had a feeling that she wanted to completely push Mei Qinglian away from Chu Xiu. At this time, Luo Feiheng came to Mu Zi's side again. Mu Zi suddenly asked, "Sister Luo, has this Madame Mei of the Zhenwu Hall been with young Master Chu for a long time?" Luo Feiheng was a little curious as to why Mu Zi was concerned about this, but she still subconsciously said, "It seems like it has been a long time. Mei Qinglian used to be Guan Xiyu's wife. Of course, that was only her identity on the surface. After Guan Xiyu died, she followed that guy, Chu Xiu. In fact, in the dark, Mei Qinglian is the saintess of the Yin demon sect. She has a good relationship with Wei Shuya and Elder Wei. She also has a high status in the Yin demon sect." Hearing Luo Feiheng's words, Mu Zi was still a little worried. However, on second thought, although Mei Qinglian was the saintess of the Yin demon sect, she could also represent the Blue Dragon Society. This also made Mu Zi feel a lot more balanced. Of course, the most important thing was that she was younger than Mei Qinglian. Of course, if Luo Feiheng knew what she was thinking, she would definitely be laughed at by Luo Feiheng for being too naive. Some men like young women, but there were also some men who liked mature women. At this moment, after Chu Xiu finished his discussion with Mei Qinglian, he went to talk to Wei Shuya about asking the Phaseless Demon Sect to help. Although the Phaseless Demon Sect had always stood on the side of the Kunlun Devil cult, this didn't mean that Chu Xiu could command the Phaseless Demon Sect as a successor. As a leader, there must be rewards and punishments. Right now, Chu Xiu hadn't led the Yin Demon Sect yet. Therefore, if he wanted the Phaseless Demon Sect to help him willingly, he had to show some sincerity. Chu Xiu's sincerity was to secretly help the Phaseless Demon Sect build some strongholds in the northern Yin territory. The Phaseless Demon Sect was deeply rooted in the Yin Demon Sect. In addition, they had been jumping out to cause trouble all year round. Most of them were hidden, and their sphere of influence was concentrated in the vast eastern Qi. Chu Xiu was the local snake in the northern Yin territory. If the Martial Suppression Hall opened the door for the Phaseless Demon Sect, their degree of hiding would be even better than in the eastern Qi territory. After the discussion, Wei Shuya asked, "You said that you were confident in dealing with Divine Monk Rama. What are you going to do? He is a supreme expert in the heaven and earth mysterious realm. You must not underestimate him." Chu Xiu said, "Of course I won't underestimate an expert of this level. Elder Wei, do you remember what I said before? In the space of the Green Capital, there is someone who has cultivated to the heaven and earth mysterious realm. In that place, it is almost impossible to use qi, let alone the power of heaven and earth. Even the existence of the heaven and earth mysterious realm can only train their bodies. Do you think that if I bring people out of that place, can they stop Rama?" This wasn't a whim in Chu Xiu's head. When he found out that he could use the heavenly key in his body to pass through the green capital space at any time, he had this idea. That old man Shang Tianliang was a genuine expert in the heaven and earth mysterious realm. Wouldn't it be a pity not to make use of him? Chapter 884. When Wei Shuya heard Chu Xiu's plan, he frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "Although there is no problem with your plan, I still have to say one more thing. The hardest thing to control in this world is people. You can use them, and they can use you. In short, you have to be careful of anything that is beyond your control." What had Wei Shuya not seen in his lifetime? He was also worried that Chu Xiu would be at a disadvantage in this kind of thing. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Don't worry, old man Wei. I know what I'm doing. If I don't have absolute confidence, I won't take the risk." After hearing Chu Xiu's words, Wei Shuya did not say anything else. Chu Xiu was not an ordinary junior. His achievements even put some of the big shots of the devil path to shame. Wei Shuya was old, and he did things too steadily and not decisive enough. Therefore, he hardly interfered in these matters. He would only remind Chu Xiu when it was necessary to prevent Chu Xiu from going overboard. After arranging everything here, Chu Xiu immediately went to the place where the space was weak and entered the Green Capital. He did not know when the Sabodhi Zen Monastery or the Chunyang Dao sect would make a move, and whether they would join forces. In any case, he had to prepare everything as soon as possible. He could not waste a single moment. When he stepped into the world full of yellow sand again, Chu Xiu felt extremely uncomfortable. Although the Jianghu in the outside world was also filled with killing and seemed extremely cruel, it was still better than this land of death. In this area full of yellow sand, Chu Xiu had no sense of direction, even though it was his second time entering. However, Chu Xiu had left a mark here before. Although it had been a while, the aura of the mark could still be detected. Following the aura of the mark, Chu Xiu headed in the direction of the mall. At this time, within the merchant city, most of the people were digging and building underground secret rooms. The deepest one was even several hundred feet deep, which was used to prevent the black storm. Don't be fooled by the fact that the merchant city was made of stacked stones. It looked extremely sturdy, but under the black storm, it wouldn't even be able to hold on for a day, and would be directly razed to the ground. Only a few dozen feet underground could they resist the powerful power of the black storm. Then after the black storm was over, they could go back and rebuild the merchant city. This was a foolproof method that the people of Green Capital had used the lives of several generations to exchange for. Of course, the prerequisite was that one had to have enough energy to withstand the black storm. In such a harsh environment hundreds of feet underground, one's energy consumption was dozens of times higher than above ground. Usually, after a black storm, many people would suffocate to death underground. But this time, there was a rare smile on the faces of the people in the mall. Thanks to Chu Xiu's blood recovery pills, the people in the shopping center were confident that they could survive the black storm. Although the people in Emerald City were already numb to death, no one was willing to die if they could live. Shang-Chi and Shang Tianliang stood on the city gate. Shang Tianliang sighed and said, "It's been a long time since I've seen such a scene. Grandpa is old, and the time I can protect the merchant city is limited. I'll leave the merchant city to you. This was originally your father's responsibility, but now it's going to be on your shoulders." Shang Tianliang's age was actually not that old. He had just passed 100 years. In the outside world, people like the old Celestial Master had lived for more than 500 years and were still healthy. But in Emerald City, everyone's lifespan was greatly reduced. The martial artists here were unable to condense a large amount of true qi to cleanse their bodies. On the contrary, they had to greatly overdraft their physical strength. Therefore, martial artists of the same realm had a much shorter lifespan than in the outside world. With Shang Tianliang's current state, let alone 500 years, it would already not be easy for him to live to 200 years old. Shang-Chi's eyes also revealed a touch of sadness. If her father had not died, he would have been able to help her grandfather support the merchant city. At that moment, Shang-Chi suddenly said, "It's all that man's fault for not keeping his word. Grandpa, you helped him kill those people, but he took those pills and left. If he had given us all those pills, let alone this black storm, we would have been able to withstand the next one." At that moment, a voice suddenly rang out. "Little girl, don't speak ill of people behind their backs. I, Chu Xiu, am famous for keeping my word. Since I've promised you something, I won't go back on my word. It's just a matter of giving it to you sooner or later." Shang Tianliang and Shang-Chi turned their heads abruptly. Standing at the entrance of the merchant city was Chu Xiu. The moment he saw Chu Xiu, even Shang Tianliang could not remain calm. "You can still enter Emerald City? Does this mean that you have a secret treasure that allows you to go back to Emerald City at any time? Or perhaps a transmission array?" For people like Shang Tianliang who were born in Emerald City, their biggest dream was to leave this damned place. Before, Shang Tianliang had guessed that outsiders like Chu Xiu should have a one-time use treasure that could temporarily break through space. But now that Chu Xiu had appeared here, his previous guess was overturned and he was given hope. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Don't get too excited, City Lord Shang. I came here this time to fulfill my promise and give you the other half of the pills. Also, I want to make a deal with City Lord Shang." "It's not appropriate to discuss it here. How about we go inside?" Shang Tianliang suppressed his slightly excited mood and gestured to Chu Xiu, leading him into the City Lord's mansion. Chu Xiu poured out the other half of the blood-restoring pills and said solemnly, "City Lord Shang should have guessed that I am different from others. Others can only enter this place by relying on an artifact that can temporarily break through space, but I can enter this space repeatedly and even take people out with me." Although Shang Tianliang had already guessed this before, when he heard Chu Xiu say this at this time, monstrous waves rose in his and Shang-Chi's hearts. This kind of thing was normal for others, but for these people in Emerald City, it was related to their future and the hopes of their ancestors for dozens of generations. However, after his excitement, Shang Tianliang also calmed down and said in a deep voice, "Take us out. What are your conditions?" Shang Tianliang had lived in this cruel environment for over 100 years, fighting against the heavens and others, so he definitely had a lot of ideas. If they were useless, Chu Xiu would never have appeared here again, and said he would keep his word. Now that Chu Xiu had returned, it proved that they were actually useful, and Chu Xiu needed them. Chu Xiu knocked on the stone table in front of him and said, I have enemies in the outside world, a lot of enemies, and there are countless people who want to kill me. Shang Tianliang nodded and said, I can see that. Although he hadn't been in contact with Chu Xiu for a long time, he was able to notice that Chu Xiu was a ruthless and cunning person. Such a person would surely be an ambitious and ruthless devil in the outside world. In short, he wasn't a good person. It would be strange if such a person did not have many enemies. You saw the old Taoist I killed last time. The forces behind him are very powerful, and the forces behind my other enemies are also very powerful. There are even existences in the heaven and earth mysterious realm. I can't fight them head-on, so I want to take you out, City Lord Shang, to help me block them. Shang Tianliang's eyes narrowed, and he was about to state his conditions, but he was interrupted by Chu Xiu. City Lord Shang, there is something I need to say in advance. Although I am here to trade with you, in fact, I have a choice, but you have no choice. If you don't agree with me, you will never be able to get out. I only need you now, City Lord Shang. I don't need anyone else, so I will only take you out. But don't worry, I have brought more elixirs and other resources. Not only can the people in the city survive this black storm, but they also won't have to worry about it in the future. Shang Tianliang narrowed his eyes, and there was a hint of fierceness in his eyes. You are threatening me with the lives of the people in the city. Chu Xiu nodded and admitted it openly. Yes, this is a threat. City Lord Shang, you are already in the heaven and earth mysterious realm. You should know how terrifying this realm is. Your current realm is even the same as your old ancestor 10,000 years ago. But because you are in the green capital, there is no way for you to exert the power of your realm. If I bring all of you out, what if you rebel against me in the future? How can I deal with a heaven and earth mysterious realm existence? I have always been a person who has a good eye for people. City Lord Shang, although you seem to be strict, you care about everyone in the city. Only when these people are still in the green capital can I feel at ease using you. Shang Tianliang still wanted to say something, but Chu Xiu beat him to it. I know what you want to say, City Lord Shang. It is nothing more than saying that you will definitely keep your word. But sorry, I don't believe you. I will not put my life on the other party's honesty. I can only be at ease if I have something in my hands. But City Lord Shang, you don't have to worry. When I reach the heaven and earth mysterious realm in the future, I will bring everyone in the city out. As long as City Lord Shang helps me block this disaster, I will also bring a portion of the people in the city out. The choice now lies in City Lord Shang's hands. Do you agree or refuse? City Lord Shang, you'd better not choose to use force. You have seen my strength, you can't kill me. Moreover, even if you kill me, you won't be able to find a way to cross this space. After Chu Xiu finished speaking, Shang Tianliang's eyes were gloomy as he pondered. Lu Jianghe, who was in the blood soul bead, curled his lips. He knew that Chu Xiu was like this. He would not easily trust others. Otherwise Lu Jianghe would not continue to be tied up here. Now Shang Tianliang was the same. Chu Xiu gave him restrictions and hope, but he did not even give him a chance to fall out. Just as Chu Xiu had said, he was the one with the initiative now. He had a choice, but Shang Tianliang had no choice. Chapter 885. Chu Xiu had always been a good judge of character. Shang Tianliang wasn't a good person. In fact, in a place like Green Capital, there wasn't a single good person. Even a little girl like Shang-Chi had blood on her hands. But it was undeniable that Shang Tianliang was a good city lord. In terms of individual strength, Shang Tianliang should be the strongest in Green Capital. If it wasn't for Merchant City dragging him down, he wouldn't have to take care of so many people, and he wouldn't be in such a miserable state. However, he still remained as the city lord, not for the sake of power, but to protect the people in the city. Even the blood recovery pills that Chu Xiu had given them previously were distributed equally by Shang Tianliang to the people in the city. With a long sigh, Shang Tianliang said, "Boy, you're right. I have no choice. I promise you. But I hope you won't lie to me. Otherwise, even if I have to risk my life, I won't let you go." Chu Xiu said lightly, "Don't worry, City Lord. You've seen my credibility. As long as it's something that I, Chu Xiu, promised, I will give it to you. I will never go back on my word. This time, I also brought some gifts for City Lord Shang. I believe they will be very useful for the City Lord." With that said, Chu Xiu handed a space box to Shang Tianliang. After opening it, it turned out to be a variety of low-level elixirs, a large amount of food, some metal materials, and ordinary weapons. These things weren't worth much in the outside world, at least for Chu Xiu's family business. But in Green Capital, they were priceless treasures. There was no need to mention the elixirs and food. The metal materials could strengthen their underground secret area to prevent it from collapsing in the black storm. The weapons could also increase the city's current strength. There might be some iron mines in Green Capital, but at this time, who would have the mood to mine? Saving some energy to find food was the key. Shang Tianliang carefully received these things, and immediately found a few of his confidants to discuss where these things should be used. At this time, Chu Xiu asked, "City Lord Shang, how strong are the other forces like Green Capital? How many existences are there at the same level as you?" Shang-Chi glanced at Chu Xiu and said, "You want to take advantage of them? I'd advise you to save it. Those people aren't like I. You can easily get hold of them. In Green City, there should be 2 or 3 people who have reached the realm of I. However, I don't know if they're dead or not. The people of Green City don't interact with each other for years, so it's normal for them to die. As for the factions, I'm not too sure. Every day, there are factions being broken up and reorganized. Sects and aristocratic families don't exist in Green Capital. My merchant city can be said to be the largest faction in the Green Capital so far, but it should be the faction that has existed for the longest time. It has been passed down to me for 3 generations." Chu Xiu nodded thoughtfully. In fact, he was just asking. He didn't think of pulling others over. One Shang Tianliang was enough. If he pulled too many people over, it would be hard to control. The strength of Green Capital was similar to what Chu Xiu had guessed. These people were all ancient people. The inheritance in their hands was absolutely complete. Even in this harsh environment, it was normal for a few heaven and earth profound realm experts to appear. After all, people's potential was unlimited. However, in this place, the sects and aristocratic families that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years would not exist. Merchant City could be said to be the most special faction in Green Capital. Only Merchant City preserved the shadow of sects and aristocratic families. For the other people in Green Capital, they just wanted to live. Today their faction was destroyed. Tomorrow, they would go and rely on others. But for the people of Merchant City, they first knew that they were people of Merchant City. Their sense of belonging to Merchant City was far greater than that of other people in Green Capital. Because of this, Chu Xiu could use the entire Merchant City to threaten Shang Tianliang. Otherwise, if it was someone else who had the chance to go out, why would they care about this? "City Lord Shang, we shouldn't delay. It's best that we leave now. I don't know when my enemies will make their move." Shang Tianliang hesitated for a moment and said, "Can we leave with Cheer? When she was young, I used to take an ancient book and tell her the story of the outside world over and over again. But until now, she hasn't had the chance to see the outside world and what it looks like." Chu Xiu paused for a moment and said, "No problem." The entire Merchant City was still in Green Capital. As long as Shang Tianliang was still thinking about Merchant City, Chu Xiu would not be afraid of any trouble. After seeing Chu Xiu agree, Shang-Chi's eyes also slightly lit up. No matter how mature and experienced she appeared, she was actually just a little girl in her 20s. After Shang Tianliang gave some orders to some of his confidants in Merchant City, he directly followed Chu Xiu and left. Bringing the 2 of them, Chu Xiu's mind moved, and the sky-piercing key directly flashed a glimmer of light, bringing the 2 of them away from this place. It was the first time they stood in the outside world without yellow sand, and the first time they saw the real blue sky and white clouds. Even though they appeared in a barren mountain with no people, this scenery still intoxicated Shang Tianliang and Shang-Chi. Shang Tianliang let out a long breath and said, "Even in my dreams, I never thought that I would actually leave that hell one day." Shang Tianliang was still considered calm, but Shang-Chi had already fallen into a daze ever since she saw the scenery outside. As someone who was born in a place full of yellow sand, Shang Tianliang might have already gotten used to it. However, Shang-Chi was still young and still had some longing. It was just that she did not expect that her longing would actually become a reality one day. Chu Xiu looked at the two of them and said, "Let's go, the two of you. This is just an ordinary barren mountain. The real scenery is behind." With that, Chu Xiu brought the two of them all the way to the Blue Dragon Society. Any scenery in the outside world was extremely fresh to Shang Tianliang and Shang-Chi. When they passed by the big cities in eastern Qi, it was an eye-opener for Shang-Chi. However, she was still rather restrained and did not request to take a look around. When they arrived at the edge of the 100,000 mountains where the Blue Dragon Society was located, the majestic mountains and dense forests still amazed the two of them. In the Blue Dragon Society, when everyone saw that Chu Xiu had gone out for a few days and brought back two fellows who looked like beggars, they all felt a little strange. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "This is the helper I invited to resist Rama, Shang Tianliang, and that is his granddaughter. Senior Duanmu, can I trouble you to bring them to wash up first? As long as you can satisfy these two's requests, try your best to satisfy them." Duanmu Qianshan nodded, but at this moment, he was also sizing up Shang Tianliang in astonishment. Chu Xiu said that this person could resist divine monk Rama, but no matter how he looked at him, Shang Tianliang did not seem to be in existence in the heaven and earth mystic realm. When Duanmu Qianshan was sizing up Shang Tianliang also glanced at Duanmu Qianshan. It was this glance that made Duanmu Qianshan feel a slight stab of pain. In the cruel environment of Green Capital, Shang Tianliang had led the entire merchant city through countless battles before he was able to protect his small gathering place. In addition, in the environment of Green Capital where people's lives were not taken seriously, Shang Tianliang's ruthless killing intent was even stronger than that of an old assassin like Duanmu Qianshan. Duanmu Qianshan's heart trembled slightly, and he immediately brought the two of them to wash up and change their clothes. During this period of time, Shang Tianliang was also sizing up the surroundings without saying a word. For a person with a personality like Chu Xiu, he said that he had countless enemies in the outside world, but at the same time, the number of people under his command was definitely innumerable. The Blue Dragon Society before him had already given Shang Tianliang a huge shock. The residents of Merchant City were actually all soldiers. Everyone, regardless of whether they had inheritances or not, did not have any sectarian bias. All martial arts were open to everyone, and everyone could practice them. However, the people of Merchant City only practiced martial arts for the sake of survival. As for the people of Blue Dragon Society, Shang Tianliang could clearly feel their killing intent, as well as their imposing manner. They practiced martial arts for the sake of killing. With such a group of well-trained killing machines, although Shang Tianliang was not clear about the status of Chu Xiu in the outside world, he was sure that they were not weak. After Duanmu Qianshan brought the two of them to wash up, Shang Tianliang and Shang-Chi did not have any other requests. They only had one request, and that was to eat. In Merchant City, as the city lord and the only grandson of the city lord, they naturally would not starve to death. However, Chu Xiu had also eaten the pastries made from the Misty Poo tree. It tasted like wax and was simply eating dirt. The desire for good food was something that most warriors did not care about. However, for Shang Tianliang and Shang-Chi, it was an existence that could only be imagined in some ancient books. Therefore, under Duanmu Qianshan's strange expression, the two of them ate over 100 dishes in an hour. They looked like the reincarnation of hungry ghosts. A chicken entered Shang Tianliang's stomach in a few bites. Although Shang-Chi was a woman, she was not much better off than Shang Tian. Although the pure energy brought by these ordinary ingredients was not as much as a blood recovery pill, the feeling of fullness was something that elixirs could not compare to. Mu Zi, who was standing beside Chu Xiu, was dumbfounded. She said, "Young Master Chu, are you sure that this old man can defeat Luo Mo? I feel that apart from eating a lot, there is nothing special about him." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I do not need him to defeat Luo Mo. In the entire pugilistic world, how many people can say that they can defeat Luo Mo for sure? I am afraid that even Yi Xiaonan would not dare to say that. I only need him to block Luo Mo. That is enough. As for the special part, if he eats a lot, then he is special. With that, Chu Xiu left immediately. Mu Ziyi asked Duanmu Qianshan in astonishment. Godfather, what does young Master Chu mean? Why is eating a lot special? Duanmu Qianshan looked at Shang Tianliang, who was still stuffing himself with food. A thoughtful look appeared in his eyes as he said, Of course it is special. If it were other warriors, how would they digest so much food? They would have stuffed themselves to death. However, look at this person. Isn't he special enough? Chapter 886. Just before Chu Xiu went to find Shang Tianliang, the undercurrent in Jianghu had already begun to surge. The vast Sun Peak in Hudong Prefecture of Eastern Qi was where the mountain gate of the Chunyang Dao sect was located. It was exceptionally magnificent. For thousands of years, the so-called vast Sun Peak was actually just an ordinary hill, until the ancestors of the Chunyang Dao sect established the Chunyang Dao sect in this place. Step by step, they reinforced the mountain peak, carved a formation, and built a large number of Taoist temples, pavilions, and other buildings in it. The entire vast Sun Peak appeared to be dazzling with golden light. It was extremely eye-catching even if it was more than 10 miles away. It was equivalent to the landmark of the entire Hudong Prefecture. At this time, the atmosphere in the Chunyang Dao sect was depressing. Chang Yunzi's corpse was placed in the entire hall. His chest was even pierced by Chu Xiu with the sky-seeking tyrant spear. The corpse was sent by the people of the real martial arts sect. The people of the real martial arts sect could imagine how excited the people of the Chunyang Dao sect would be when they saw the corpse. Therefore, he directly turned around and left after throwing the corpse. Chu Xiu, the Chunyang Dao sect, and you are absolutely irreconcilable. A white-haired old Taoist roared in a low voice, as if he wanted to skin Chu Xiu alive. The old Taoist's words seemed to have opened a floodgate. In the hall, the group of old Taoists and middle-aged Taoists of the Chunyang Dao sect began to scold Chu Xiu. They looked like they wanted to hack Chu Xiu into pieces. At this time, standing in front of Chang Yunzi's corpse was an old Taoist with messy hair and a gray Taoist robe. He was the current leader of the Chunyang Dao sect, Immortal Shouyang, Ling Yunzi. The sect leader of the Chunyang Dao sect could be said to be extremely low-key. He was the most low-key one among the three great Dao sects. However, it was said that Ling Yunzi was extremely sharp when he was young. He was the number one on the Longhu leaderboard of his generation. He had a fiery temper and abhorred evil. Under the pure Yang sword, all evil spirits would retreat. He had even annihilated a major demonic sect by himself. He had set up the Nine Heavens pure Yang formation with his sword, causing the entire demonic sect to be annihilated. From then on, Ling Yunzi became famous in the pugilistic world. It was also because of this battle that Ling Yunzi inherited the position of the leader of the Chunyang Dao sect. However, for some unknown reason, ever since Ling Yunzi took over the position of Chunyang Dao sect's sect master, he became more and more low-key. Even in the entire Chunyang Dao sect, very few disciples could see him. As a result, this person, who was once ranked in the top 5 on the leaderboard when he was at his peak, had not appeared on any leaderboard for decades. At this moment, looking at Zhang Yunzi's corpse, who had died with his eyes open, Ling Yunzi gently stroked his face with his hand, closed his eyes, and let out a long sigh. This sigh immediately made everyone in the hall quiet down, and turn their eyes to Ling Yunzi. Do you all think that the Chunyang Dao sect should take revenge? The Taoist priests present nodded in unison. Someone even said loudly, Sect leader, senior brother Zhang Yunzi was killed by Chu Xiu in front of everyone. If the Chunyang Dao sect doesn't take revenge for such a huge grudge, how can the Chunyang Dao sect have the face to stand in the pugilistic world? Ling Yunzi suddenly raised his head and said, Does the Chunyang Dao sect only rely on face to stand in the pugilistic world? The old Taoist priest who spoke suddenly paused, but then he snorted coldly and said, Face is for others to see, but the Chunyang Dao sect can't just let it go. With senior brother Zhang Yunzi's strength, even if he can't defeat Chu Xiu, he can still escape. But why didn't he escape? Because he is the leader of the 6 Temple Guardian spiritual masters. If he escapes, the entire Chunyang Dao sect will lose face. Moreover, If a murderer like Chu Xiu appears in the pugilistic world again, it will be a catastrophe for the entire pugilistic world. Senior brother Zhang Yunzi wants to use his life to drag the devil down with him. But now senior brother Zhang Yunzi is dead, but the devil is still alive. If the Chunyang Dao sect swallows this insult, I'm afraid I won't even dare to die because I have no face to see senior brother Zhang Yunzi. The old Taoist priest's words were the thoughts of almost all the Taoists present. As soon as he said this, the others also agreed. Apart from Ling Yunzi, the only person who could still remain calm was the junior uncle of the Chunyang Dao sect, Shi Yunzi. Ling Yunzi waved his hand and said with slight exhaustion, "If that's the case, then do it." However, the Chunyang Dao sect can't be the only one to do it. Chu Xiu is not alone. The Zhenwu Hall, the Blue Dragon Society, the Guanzhong Torture Room, and the entire Yinma clan are standing behind him. If we want to kill the devil, we can't be unprepared. Later, I will ask Shi Yunzi to go to Sabodhi Zen Temple. I believe it won't be peaceful there. Alright, all of you can leave first and prepare for senior brother Zhang Yunzi's burial. Junior brother Shi Yunzi, you stay. If it was during normal times, the people of the Dao sects would definitely not ask the Buddhist sects for help. They would definitely oppose Ling Yunzi's approach. However, the people of the Chunyang Dao sect were just a little paranoid, but they were not idiots. It was indeed a little difficult for them to deal with Chu Xiu alone. Therefore, at this time they could only temporarily put aside their sectarian views and join forces with the monks of Nanman to annihilate Chu Xiu together. After everyone left, Ling Yunzi let out a long sigh and said in a low voice, "Junior brother, do you think I'm very useless? Master named me Ling Yunzi because he hoped that I would have the ambition to reach the clouds in the future and soar to the sky. Later, he gave me the Taoist name Shouyang because he wanted me to guard the Chunyang Dao sect well. In the end, when it came to me, the Chunyang Dao sect was at its weakest in the past thousands of years. In the past, the Chunyang Dao sect was the leader of the Dao sects when it was at its peak. At that time, the real martial arts sect was just a weak branch of the Dao sects. There were only a dozen little Taoists with the surname Zhang in the Longhu Mountain Celestial Master Mansion. They were preaching in the wilderness of West Chu. Now because of Ning Xuanji, the real martial arts sect became the leader of the Dao sects. Even if Ning Xuanji had disappeared for 500 years, there were still people who remembered the identity of the real martial arts sect. At least, with Ning Xuanji's halo, it would not be a problem for the real martial arts sect to survive for another 500 years. As for the Celestial Master Mansion, with the old Celestial Master in charge, the rest of the middle-aged and young people, and the latest generation of powerhouses, it had long become the #1 Dao sects. He had been guarding the Chunyang Dao sect for his whole life, but he had left the Chunyang Dao sect in such a state. This made Ling Yunzi feel ashamed to face his ancestors. At that moment, Shi Yunzi did not have his usual cheeky look. He just closed his eyes and sighed. "Senior brother, you've done well enough. If you hadn't suppressed the old guys in the sect all these years and balanced the forces, who knows what the Chunyang Dao sect would be like now? I haven't had much contact with my chief master, but he has a good eye for people. Since he handed the position of the sect master to you, it proves that you're qualified to take the position." Ling Yunzi closed his eyes slightly and said, "The monks in the Buddhist sects always talk about karma and karma. I don't believe it. How can there be so much karma in this world? But now I believe it. The Chunyang Dao sect has been in the limelight for too long. Maybe even the heavens can't stand it anymore." Face. Haha, they still don't understand. To stand at the peak of the martial world, you either have to be strong enough or shameless enough. If you want face without strength, that's just embarrassing. If those who knew Ling Yunzi well in the past saw him like this, they would definitely be shocked. The Taoist sect's true master who hated evil and had a fiery temper in the past had now turned into this dejected look. Shi Yunzi stood up and said, "Senior brother, don't think too much. At least they've grown a little. If it was before, they might still say something like, 'Take revenge on your own.' And there's no need to find outsiders to join forces with. I'll run around the Sabodhi monastery. Other people want face, but my face is worthless. Not to mention the Sabodhi monastery, I'll even run to the Great Light Monastery." Ling Yunzi suddenly opened his eyes and said, in the Chunyang Dao sect. You're the only one who has come into contact with Chu Xiao. Do you think that if we make a move, will we be able to completely get rid of Chu Xiao? Shi Yunzi stood up and said, Who knows? If we can calculate such things, there won't be so much trouble. Senior brother, we have no choice. If we don't make a move, the entire Chunyang Dao sect will be in chaos. The habits and tempers that have been accumulated over several generations, my chief master can't control them. You can't control them even after a few decades, and the next generation will probably be the same. Everyone says that the law is natural, but how is that natural? Whether they die or live, we'll leave it to fate. We'll just have to make do with our lives. How can the huge Chunyang Dao sect collapse? After saying that, Shi Yunzi turned and walked out of the Pyongyang palace, leaving Ling Yunzi behind with a deep sigh. The lethargy on his body became even thicker. Over 10 days later, in the Sabodhi monastery, Shi Yunzi was dressed in a luxurious embroidered Taiji Daoist robe. His hair was combed into a neat bun. An ancestor Lu's divine weapon, pure yang, was hanging on his waist. He had a solemn expression on his face. His appearance was completely different from the sloppy appearance he had in the Chunyang Dao sect. When he was outside, he had to pay attention to his image. Abbot Rama, this is what the Chunyang Dao sect means now. Chu Xiao has a special identity. Touching him is equivalent to touching the entire demonic path. In the past, the eminent monk of your temple, Jingchan Jizang, failed to kill Chu Xiao and resurrect Chu Xiao. Now it has caused even more trouble. Chu Xiao's strength has increased greatly. My senior brother, Yunzi, died in his hands. Now Chu Xiao even controls one of the 4 spirits, the Blue Dragon Society. If a sharp sword stained with blood is held in the hands of a demon whose hands are stained with even more blood, the consequences are self-evident. In the past 10 years, the battle between the righteous and demonic paths on Floating Jade Mountain was considered a small skirmish. Both sides were probing each other. Although the battle between the righteous and demonic paths in the moon-worshipping sect didn't seem to have a clear winner, it led to the rise of the moon-worshipping sect. So in fact the righteous path has already lost. Now that Chu Xiao has risen, it also represents the rise of the Yinma clan behind him. This does not only concern our 2 clans, but also the righteous path of the entire martial arts world. Shi Yunzi said with a solemn expression. So, today, I represent the Chunyang Dao sect to join forces with the Sabodhi monastery and gather the power of both Taoism and Buddhism in the world. Let go of our prejudices and start the 3rd great war between the righteous path and the demonic path to kill Chu Xiao. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.